You gotta make money. You gotta keep that margin. So the only way for you to do that is to make sure that every employee is maxed out in terms of the productivity. How do we build a career in the BPO industry?
Correct.
What are you gonna do for you to be able to get in, and then eventually move from from the entry level, maybe as an agent, and eventually go up in the ranks. Imagine getting an exposure in travel, in tech, in healthcare.
Every conversation starts with a moment, a pause, a sip, a moment of reflection. From stories of entrepreneurs to visionaries and their challenges about business and putting up companies, this is where we go deep into the challenges and the issues that every single entrepreneur is encountering in the workplace. So take a moment, lean in, get a sip of coffee, and let's brew unforgettable conversations, one story at a time.
What's up, Nor?
Good job,
Welcome to
man.
our second episode of the
Yeah,
podcast.
I know. So we're gonna talk about a couple of things, diba? I think last time you were asking about how do we build a career in the BPO industry?
Correct.
What are you gonna do for you to be able to get in, and then eventually move from from the entry level, maybe as an agent, and eventually go up in the ranks, right? So we've all been there, and I think a lot of people are having that question right now, where how do I succeed, right? If this is the kind of career that I wanna get into, then what are the requirements for me to get in? How do I succeed? I think there's a lot of misconceptions also out there that if you're in the BPO, it seems like that's your last option or last career option, right? Which is
Yes.
absolutely not true. So all of these things we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how do you build up your career in the BPO industry. We're going to talk about how you get in. We're also going to be talking about the nuances of the professionalism, the culture,
Correct.
and probably if you're somebody or you're a business and you want to outsource, and you have to understand all of these nuances in this culture and how the people are actually operating inside these organizations,
And behind the scenes, right?
and behind the scenes, because these are very, very important for you to succeed. So I think we're gonna tell you guys some real life stories. A lot of these
Personal
are actually
stories, yeah.
personal stories coming from experience, and we're not gonna hold back, right? We're gonna tell it as it is. We all know
no sugarcoating.
no sugarcoating, absolutely, yeah. So tell me, how did you start? What was your entry point?
All right. I started my career way back 2008. BPO industries way back then it's very hot
Yeah,
because the salaries are above average
Yep.
compared to the normal corporate life that others are actually
Right.
working on. And during that time, if you're gonna go into the BPO industry, normally they would call it the call center
yes.
life.
The typical misconception that it's
exactly.
about call center.
Call
but It's
center.
literally not. Yeah.
You're probably don't have any option anymore.
Correct.
That is what they think about it. And I started my career as a recruiter.
Straight off the bat.
Yes, as a
Oh, okay.
recruiter. It was a startup. I wouldn't say startup company, but it's a new site.
Going
here
back
in
to the
Clark.
startup again, we're talking about a startup,
Exactly,
right?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I started my career as a recruiter. Then after 6 months, I just felt that I think the recruitment department is very flat, and you cannot really go and work your way up
Right,
really
right.
fast because again, the department is flat, and in the operations, you really have a lot of opportunity.
Right.
So after that, I resigned. I went to a different company and started my way as an agent. After
How long have you been an agent?
after 4 months, I became as what do you call this?
So
Like,
4 months as an agent, and then you got promoted.
I didn't get the real promotion because they call it as
POC or an
Yes.
OIC. Yeah, that's another thing that's always happening in the industry. Right?
POC or
Yes.
what do they call it? Like an assistant to the trainer. assistant-
Correct.
Then it was really more of like me understanding which path I would really want to take then,
Yeah.
because I was torn between going into the quality
Right.
and the training post.
Right. So,
So-
so I think you've struck a very very important thing there. So you mentioned like the OIC, the POC, because I think let's educate the viewers out here, right? Especially the clients, especially those young guys who would want to get into the industry. That one of the very prevalent practice in the industry was, okay, you're an agent, you seem to be good. Let's put you on a POC role, on an OIC role, no salary increases, no anything. And sometimes, and this happens a lot, right? Maybe not sometimes, maybe 80% of the time,
Exactly.
you are in that role for about 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes you get forgotten. Yeah, and you've always been in that role, right? And there are instances as well that I've seen this multiple times. The OIC, the POC has been there for a year or two, and then suddenly
Somebody
the role
got there.
opens, somebody got in, and the
Yeah.
OIC and POC is relegated back to the former role. And this has been a practice that is always happening over
Correct.
and over and over again, right?
Yeah, good thing way back then. I mean, I didn't get the post for that because I was a training assistant.
Yeah.
Like I chose the training assistant, but there was really no post for that. So there's really no salary.
So it's something that
upgrade.
you kind of like you've created,
Yeah.
right?
So, okay, I was in the training assistant post, but a real job opening came into the quality department. So I left that post and applied for the quality.
So that's where you got into the qualities.
Yes, a huge chunk of my career was in the quality department.
Right.
Probably 7 years.
Okay.
From the BPO industry, even to the food industry.
Right.
I mean, if I was with a huge multinational company that works, that's really working on the food industry.
Got you. And then this is where you've learned all those processes and systems that you
Correct.
can be teaching over and over again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So similar to you, I had an experience in terms of kind of like creating my own role. So just for everybody, so I started as well as an agent, and this is back in 2006, right? So that explains what my age is, right? So I started in the industry in 2006, and I think the industry at that time was probably around 10 years old already, but at the same time it was still hot, right? So my story was I applied initially for this company. Right, the company. It was a very, very good company actually. It's called People Support. It's one of the pioneers
Pioneers.
in the in the industry. Right. So I applied the first time, and when I applied for an agent role, I got rejected. Right. So I got rejected, and I will never forget who the recruiter was. What's the name of the recruiter? What she's wearing, what I was wearing, and I will never forget about it ever. And then after a few months, I applied again. I got in, and then eventually, she was still there.
Right.
So I spent about 11 months as an agent, and then I got promoted after 11 months. My initial promotion was to become a trainer, but same as you, I kind of like created that role, right? So I was an agent, and then the training department was having a difficulty in terms of filling up the training assistants because of the very, very high ramp, the fast ramping, and they're training a lot of people. So I said, hey, let me volunteer, let me do it, right? So I got the role. So I think I was there for about 6-7 months, no salary increase, more of like a POCP OIC type of
But-
role, right?
But you wanna? I just wanna highlight that you were very proactive in asking.
I
for-
literally went to the trainer and said, hey, I want to train these guys. Can you give me the role? There was no opening. It just said, give me the role. Can I get it? And it so happened that she's very, very open to it, and she gave me the opportunity, and I said, okay. That's pretty much started it. And 6-7 months into the role, I applied as a supervisor, kind of like a team manager. The first time I applied, I got rejected. Right? I got
Okay.
rejected. Yeah, got rejected. And then I applied again, and I got the role. So my career path really was I was an agent for about 11 months, trainer for about 7 months, and then I was a supervisor, team manager for about a year and a half, and then I became an operations manager for about 2 years, and then senior operations manager for another year and a half, and then eventually it just moved on, over and over again. So it's literally my career pathing was 2 years. Every 2 years I got promoted on an average,
Yeah.
right? But there was a point where it went to a tipping point
Mm-hmm.
because in the industry you can only get to a certain level, and you have to figure out a way to kind of like figure out a way to move somewhere. So this is when, after about 7 years in people support, I decided, okay, it's time for me to move on. I need to explore other career opportunities with other organizations, and this is where my pathing led me to in terms of entrepreneurship. So that environment, right, as difficult as it was, as challenging as it was, gave me an opportunity really to pursue my entrepreneurship, because even if I was an agent, I was already dabbling with a lot of things, and that really helped me in terms of opening the mindset. Because let's put it this way, I'd say 50%, maybe 60 or 70% of the people who are working in the industry probably were there because they couldn't find a job somewhere else, and okay, let's take this as a temporary job at this point, and then let's see how it goes, right? And that's how I literally went in, right? It wasn't my plan, as a matter of fact, to get into the industry. My plan was, I was with the government for 2 years. I was doing huge projects for the government, and my plan was to kind of like get into a different business, right? Now, while I was walking, I saw this company hiring, and I tried it. I didn't pass. Said, shit, I need to get I was
You were
challenged.
challenged.
Exactly. I was challenged. So I did it again. And for all I know, 7 years passed, couple of decades passed,
You're
I'm
still
in the
here.
industry. So literally, this industry is by accident for me. It's accidental industry for me. But
Okay.
what it also gave me is an opportunity to be exposed with so many different industries. Like imagine getting an exposure in travel, in tech, in healthcare, and probably any industry that you can imagine. I've experienced it: insurance, finance, everything, right? So I could literally get to talk about all of these things.
Right.
Right.
Just want to highlight this one. Two things. Number one is, in this kind of industry, you really have to be proactive. Just
Yes.
like what you've done.
Exactly.
Like creating your own role.
Right.
All right. And I just want to highlight as well that there is a lot of opportunity when it comes to the outsourcing. It's not the typical call center that everybody's thinking of, right? There's a lot of what do you call this, niche and like industries that are into outsourcing, not just telcos, not just other financial or banks or whatsoever that are looking for people who's gonna take their calls.
Yep.
There are back office services.
Yep.
There are people who's actually just looking at the documents, verifying them, those kind of stuff. It's really vague, and this is something that probably other business owners would really wanna take a look into, because
Understand, yeah.
normally when they
The
say
first thing that they're thinking is about
Okay.
customer service and taking the
I,
calls,
I
right?
cannot outsource anything because
I don't need the customer service,
need
or
the
I don't
customer
need
service,
yeah,
right? So they really have to understand that there are other opportunities, other department from their company that can be outsourced as well.
Exactly. So give the audience some of these roles that are not typically the first option for outsourcing, but are generally the right decision to outsource.
Okay, yeah. One thing that I would really wanna take a look is into the back office thing.
Okay.
Right. So the back office department. So there are companies that are employing local. Local employees that are working on their papers, but these are actually being done right now online, because customers are sending the documents online.
Yeah.
Gone are those days that are there submitting paperwork,
Right.
right? So this now is an option to outsource because they can validate and check the papers online. What else? Credit card verification.
Okay.
So those things, you healthcare as well.
Yeah.
Those for insurances, and checking if they're eligible for such insurance. You can outsource a lot of things right now.
Right.
So
So if let's say, for example, you're a business owner and you want to explore the opportunity to outsource, let's say in the Philippines, what is your mentality? Like, okay, obviously you cannot outsource everything, right? If you're
Sure.
if you're in the US and you want to outsource, you don't want to outsource the actual customer facing, or
Yeah.
right, you can't do that, right? Or maybe the sales people, you might want to outsource that up to a certain point, but give them a little bit of a guidance in terms of what's the mechanism, what's the thought process there.
Mm. If you're a business owner, the first thing that you would really want to look at is what's really taking the chunk of my time.
Mhm.
Am I really am I supposed to do this, or is somebody else capable or should be doing this? Because this is something that they can do online,
Okay.
right? So, say for example, you're juggling your time between growing the business and um, doing the admin stuff.
Mhm.
Then that's actually a red light already for you to outsource, because if a lot of your hours are being taken by doing the admin task and doing the paperwork, all those kind of stuff, I mean, that's a sign for you to probably have an assistant,
Right.
have a virtual assistant who can help you out with this, because instead of doing that, you can simply grow your company.
As they were saying, if you're working inside your business and outside and not
Mm.
outside your business, then, or on top of your business, then literally you're the employee and you're not the entrepreneur,
Mm.
right? So yeah, that's a good process. And my thought process there is two things. You break it down between what's generating the growth in the revenue and what's the cost.
Yeah.
So what's in the cost? These are your customer support, maybe these are your admin people, maybe these are your assistant. And then what's in the revenue generation? Your salespeople,
Mhm.
your maybe your marketing, your creatives, those kind of stuff. Those are what you generates the revenue for you, right? So my suggestion is go ahead and outsource the non-revenue generation because they're typically the cost. It
Correct.
saves you 50 to 70% of the cost. Then that savings that you're gonna get, move them to the other side to generate more revenue.
That is correct. That is correct. I just want to go back into to those people who would really want to be into the business of outsourcing, for example, or be in the career of outsourcing. So, um, in your experience, what kind of like what kind of niche are typically very popular right now?
Niche.
Way back,
So
back to what we were. I mean, before it was
you're-
purely telco.
Okay, you're asking from
Technical.
from an applicant perspective,
Yes.
right? Somebody who wants to get in. There's really a lot. I mean, telco is still hot. Travel is still hot. Anything that's related to call center is still hot. But what's really coming out right now are the virtual assistants, the more general virtual assistants.
Mhm.
Oh, somebody's calling you.
Sorry, I have to. Let me just turn it off. Okay.
All right, no worries. So we're talking about the virtual assistants, and I think this is really hot right now. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of companies already that are starting to outsource or starting to build up a virtual assistant outsourcing organization. And I think it's hot. Why? Because now companies are starting to realize that it's not just about the customer support. There's a whole gamut of things that you can actually outsource. And if you're a small company, say for example, you're an entrepreneur with 5 people, your best entry to outsourcing is hire a virtual assistant. Because the virtual assistant can do so many things for you.
Yeah.
Can do your customer support, can
Correct.
reply to your emails, can reply to your chats, can do probably a little bit of marketing, a little bit of a customer support, a little bit of social media. They're everywhere, everything, right? So you're asking if you're somebody who wants to get into the industry, that could be a good entry point, right?
Mhm.
A virtual assistant. If you don't want to do the calls, that's
Yes.
the other way around. Right?
So, and another point that I would like to highlight as well. So you mentioned even small companies can outsource, because
Of course.
like right now, probably they're thinking that, okay, my company is not huge yet. I want to still do it on my own. So where do you think is the gap, or where do you think is the point where, okay, my company is, I think this is time for me to outsource because
It's
I'm
always
big already.
You're right. It's always about the time. It's always about you're an entrepreneur. You only have 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
Say you sleep 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So you're literally left with 15, 16 to 18 hours a day for work, right? And you cannot do everything else. So as I said earlier, what you do is classify the things that you do in terms of revenue generation and the cost area. And the cost area, I think that's where you look into first. If this cost area is generating, say, half of your time, just imagine the cost, right? If you're an entrepreneur and say you generate a revenue of about, say, maybe $5,000 an hour, and then you're doing the customer support, you're literally spending $5,000 an hour to do the customer support. Instead, you can outsource that for, say, $12 an hour, $10 an hour, right? And that, imagine the amount of savings, and that amount of savings can then be put into your revenue generation, so you can spend more time in terms of building your revenue. So my suggestion is look for what's consuming your time that is not generating the revenue, and that's the first point of entry for you to outsource.
Okay.
And from the people perspective who wants to get into the industry, it's very important that you're going to be very flexible.
Correct.
It's almost to your advantage if you are a generalist to start with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So as a matter of fact, this book is a very, very perfect way to kind of like
Tim Ferriss.
right. So I love this book. I've read this multiple times already in the past. And Tim Ferriss, if you don't have this book, get it. This actually gives you kind of like a step-by-step procedure in terms of how to consider outsourcing, what it can do for you. Because let's admit it, if you're going to be outsourcing, you will encounter a lot of problems. There are a lot of disadvantages here for sure, because you don't know what's the level of quality that you're going to be getting. You're not even sure if the person that you've outsourced to is actually working for you, reliable and all those stuff. So there's an element of a balance between a freelance outsourcing and a BPO, and that's what we're trying to address right now. Correct? We want to be in the middle where if you're a freelancer, if you're a business who wants to hire a freelancer because you want the agility and you want the efficiency and you want the speed, flexibility, then you go for a freelancing. The problem with freelancing is you don't have the security of the people that you're working with, right? You're not bounded by a contract. And then on the other side, you're a freelance. Your boss can literally terminate you just like that and not decide to pay you, and you're done. There's nothing you can do.
And in the freelancing world, I mean, if I'm going to hire someone who's doing freelancing, what's really important there is, or I would say some of the things that they would really want to look at is that there's really no management looking after the employee.
100%, and that's where the BPO setup comes in, because the BPO setup. So this is your freelancing setup, and this is your BPO setup. So the BPO setup, then that is where the management comes in. Like we literally run for you, we do the service for you, we do the design for you, we do everything. That's the BPO part. Typically, though, the BPO part is not very accessible for small business owners.
Correct.
And that's where the challenge comes in, because you want to have that level of security, the systems, the processes, the hiring mechanism, the protection of your knowledge or data, whatever. And you don't get that from the freelancing world. Yeah, you get that from the BPO. But if you're a startup and you need one person, none of these big companies are going to look at you and say, let me get your business. They don't care. You're not 100.
Too small.
Yeah, you're too small, of course. So what do? You go to the freelancing. But then, this is where the problem comes out. Because you have no security. There's no protection. And, you don't know exactly. You don't have the process. You don't have the experience in terms of how to outsource. So this is why you and I were building this something in between that's gonna match the freelancing and the BPO and gives them the opportunity to be very, very agile in a lot of things. So if you're somebody who aspire or a startup, then look at that. But if you're aspiring to be in the industry, look at this, right? How can you be in the freelancing industry? Be a generalist to start with, and then focus on what skill sets can you build into. So you might be a generalist right now, but maybe look at bookkeeping. It's a lot of bookkeeping needs.
Yeah.
Bookkeepers in the US are very, very expensive. So it's a lot of bookkeeping needs, and it's something that you can do anywhere across the world. So look at that. So you're a person, it's so easy to learn Xero or QuickBooks. Get some trainings. There's a lot of free trainings in there. You can actually get your certification. And for all you know, you're going to be a certified bookkeeper.
That is correct.
Right?
That's correct. There's a lot of online courses that can be done when it comes to not just the accounting and bookkeeping part. I mean, if you really want to be in this industry, there are a lot of materials that you can use. There are courses online that you can purchase as well. I mean, you don't even have to purchase actually. There are some who's really
It's free.
are really free.
Yeah.
So you can use that. And yeah, what other things that you would really want to look at right now into the outsourcing or the let's just go back to the setup. You mentioned earlier some of the things that are happening behind the scenes in the
Yes.
BPO.
Yes. Okay. So let's
Let's make it
let's go to-
light right now because
let's go to
that's,
let's go to the controversial side and some of the light stuff here. Okay, so there's a lot of promises. If you're an entrepreneur and you're dealing with a vendor, a BPO company, right? So you're a client and you're a BPO organization and you're kind of like working on a contract here. We all know there's a lot of promises happening.
correct. There are numbers to hit.
There are numbers to hit. There's goals to be achieved, and sometimes the BPO companies would always overpromise just to be able to deliver.
Okay, this is
Okay.
the exciting part.
All right, so they would tend to overpromise. So now what happens? Because the BPO company is trying to overpromise in terms of what are we going to deliver in your behalf. So then they would hire people, and they would train these people, and then they would make sure that these people delivers on those promises.
Okay. You might want to give a context about what would be the consequences if they're not able to meet them
Exactly. So
in huge BPO industry.
So let's look at the big ones, the big players. Let's look at that. When you ask existing employees of a BPO organization, they would say it's a very, very fast pace. It's difficult. It's challenging. Sometimes it's bordering toxic. There's a lot of things that makes it toxic, but there's also some good companies out there. But when you're in the BPO industry, every minute counts. Like literally by the minute, every single minute counts, especially on high volume industries like the travel and the telco. Every minute counts. And literally, if you're an employee, every single activity that you do, what you press on the button is counted. If you're gonna go to the restroom, you're gonna press something,
yeah.
and then that's counted by the minute. Just imagine if you're an employee and you're working and you really want to go to the restroom, and you probably only are given like 10 minutes a day
Yes.
allowed for restroom, because for everybody's benefit, there is what you call a number of productive hours that's being measured on a particular day, and you gotta meet that productive hours. So this is where the by the minute rule comes into, and I think this is where the challenge really is coming into, because it's very, very difficult, and it's very, very difficult to have that level of focus and not be not feel the toxicity of this industry. And you gotta have a lot of discipline. So salute to all the agents and the employees of the BPO, because they're able to sustain that. Correct. Now, let me go back to the KPIs, the key performance indicators, because your company promises the client that they're gonna be able to deliver this. Now, because the promise of the industry is to save cost to the client, how does that work? And you gave a certain promise to your clients, then you have to find a way to pinch every penny as much as possible, because your promise to the client is you save costs but you deliver the quality. But at the same time, you have to be able to manage what is the productivity of the employees. This is why every minute counts in the BPO industry. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because when a particular company promises a certain level of productivity, there is a mix and balance of how much productivity do they want from every single employee. So they're looking for efficiency so that they can retain a certain level of margin.
And why are they doing that?
Yeah, because you gotta make money, right?
Correct.
You gotta make money. You gotta keep that margin. So the only way for you to do that is to make sure that every employee is maxed out in terms of the productivity. This is where it gets tricky, because from let's say from the top person in the company down to the managers, they would be maximizing that productivity for every single person. That's why they're monitoring every single minute. Now, let's admit it. In this industry, in the BPO industry, there's a very fast promotion. There's a lot of career growths happening. Almost every year, every 2 years, if you're good, you get promoted.
That is right.
And sometimes even before a person becomes very mature enough to become a leader, they already get promoted to a particular role. So what happens?
Okay.
What happens if a particular person who's good at their job as an agent and gets promoted to a certain level, a manager perhaps, and they don't have the experience and they don't have the background in terms of how to run motivation, how to be a leader, how to put systems in place, then what happens? They become somebody who's very authoritative and say, do this or I'll terminate you. Do this or I'll give you a warning. Do this or I'll give you a paper. And this is why a lot of these companies become an industry of paper. Every single move that you get a warning.
Correct.
Correct? And a lot of the managers, and I'm not saying all, but I'd say majority of the managers, their only way to really get an output out of their team is warning.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So they give warning, they use it as a tool, not as a last resource, but as a first option of tool for them to generate performance. So meaning they're using fear, authority to get performance. So what happens? This is where toxicity comes in.
No, I just, I mean, this is just something that went into my mind right now. That's probably the reason why, if you noticed before, the culture is actually not being highlighted in the call center or the outsourcing industry. But right now, if you notice, they're actually putting best place to work with, right? I mean, what do you think is the effect of that kind of tagline or something? If you want to take a look on there on others marketing strategy, I mean, they can be certified as
Right.
the best place to work with.
Correct.
What do you think is the idea or wisdom behind that?
So I'd say it's a marketing tactic. It's a marketing ploy. Why? Because the main product of the BPO industry is the people. Technically, the people. If you do not recruit a person, you do not have a product to sell because it's a service-bound industry. Right? It's everything about service. So then, how do you attract the people?
Okay.
The way for you to attract the people is to say, go into the market and say, hey, this is the best company in the world to work with because we maintain a happy culture. We do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got bean bags, we got pool tables, we got food in the pantry, we got free food and all those stuff, the bells and whistles, it's all there.
Okay.
So now it becomes a marketing ploy. So it's good. And actually, a lot of companies are really kind of serious in terms of taking it to the next level and making sure that their employees are happy. And we can see that there's a lot of effort there. There is a lot of effort. As a matter of fact, it's becoming kind of like a battle cry of most of these companies to say, we want the employees to be happy. But the plan and the strategy, if not executed properly, becomes a different thing. And this is what I'm saying. The key to any organization is not just the direction of that organization in terms of the happiness of the people, whatever the CEO says, or maybe the head of the department or head of the division, but it's actually the people who are running the business on the ground, your managers. These are the most important people on the ground because if they don't have the training, they don't have the background, they don't have the skill sets, they don't have the maturity to lead a team, and this is where the issues are happening.
Correct.
And just imagine this. You have multiple layers in an organization and all of them have the same career pathing. Like an agent becomes a supervisor, a manager. Then a manager becomes a senior manager becomes the director becomes a vice president and all those stuff. The path of these people are exactly the same. Unlike in any industry that there's a lot of cross-pollination.
Yeah.
Example, if you're working in an automotive industry, then one way or another, somebody from maybe a different industry, maybe a manufacturing industry gets into your industry and brings in the best practices. So now you have a cross-pollination of the best practices, the management and the leadership, right? And then you build a
Becomes
certain level
dynamic.
of dynamic, and you kind of like cross-pollinate it with different aspects. In the BPO industry, it's different. It's very rare that you get somebody who's outside from a different industry gets in and brings their
Correct.
best practices there, because most of the people who gets promoted are from the agent level and they don't know anything else other than what they've gone through on the road. And that's a scary proposition there, because that's the reason why sometimes their only tool for them to get the best out of their people is to issue a warning, right? Because a supervisor will also get the warning from the manager. The manager will also get the warning from the director. It's the same thing over and over again. What what the baby sees from the parent, that's what they do. So what I'm saying is, without this cross pollination of the people from different industries, it becomes kind of like it's there's no other view in terms of how do you run leadership and management.
It's like they only have one idea on how to grow.
Exactly.
So you're what you're trying to say right now, Noor, is it is a good idea for a company to, on a certain level, they get to have something external.
External from a different industry.
Yeah.
Because what happens in the BPO industry is, yes, there are external hires, but they're from the same industry. So what happens is, think about this: how many times have you been in a company and, hey, this guy worked from a different company and this guy worked from a different company. They go in, they bring their best experience to another company, but it's all the same. It's the BPO. It just came from one route,
Different brand.
different branches, and then eventually at the top of the branch, they all met and say, hey, we got our experiences. And I think that's the problem. I think that's where the toxicity in the industry comes from. Because with lack of the leadership and the ability of the people in the middle to run the show, they resort to things like the warning. And I always say, and I think I've been a very, very hard proponent I always put this when I was in this industry in the past. I can't remember a time when I actually gave paper.
Mhm.
I've never done it, and I refuse to do it. I will actually go to a fight with whoever the manager, the director is, and if they would force me to give a paper to a particular employee, I will never do it. And nobody has, up until this point, has forced me to do it, because I refuse, because I don't think it's the right thing to do. Because my belief is,
Right.
if you're a leader and you gave a paper to somebody because of warning, then you have failed to do your job.
Right.
You have failed to do your job. Your job is to lead. Your job is to pull them to the right direction. And meaning the paper is just an indicator of not the employee failing to do their job.
It's
It's
you
an
failing.
indicator of you failing to do your job. And this is the sad thing. A lot of the leaders in the industry would take pride in, hey, I give warnings left and right. What you fail to realize, and these people fail to realize, is they're actually an indication of how bad you are as a leader. The more papers that you write, the more it's an indication of you as a terrible manager, a terrible leader.
So whenever you tend to give papers and warnings, it's like you failing to influence the person.
It's your failure. It's nobody else's failure. It's always the leader. And if you think about the accountability, it's always,
Accountability.
if your team member does something good, it's them. They get all
Credits.
the credits. But if they do something bad, you as the leader should take the
Take
credit for
ownership.
it. The ownership, right? It's your fault. Unfortunately, this simple way of thinking is not very prevalent yet. So we have to do a lot of training to get to a certain level.
And the reason why we're talking about this is because normally this is what is happening
Yes.
in the BPO industry.
Exactly.
No, I just want to go back on the um, on the point we're in. Why do certain companies try to make the most out of it and make sure that the numbers and their goals are being met for a certain client?
At the end of the day, it's all about their promise of delivering a KPI.
And if they fail to do
And
that,
if they fail to do that, they get penalties.
penalties.
Yes. So the penalty, if you don't hit a certain level of service level, for example, then you get that penalty.
All right. Let's
Okay.
now go straight forward to what they would normally do for
Okay.
not to
Now this is
to be
controversial.
penalized.
This is controversial. I'm gonna get a lot of heat from this, but
Yes, of
this
course.
this is exactly what's happening for a lot of companies out there. It's not uncommon for these companies to cook the numbers.
All right.
It's not sorry, it's not uncommon. It happens a lot of times. I'm not saying a lot of people are doing it, but there are people who are actually doing it. um, it also is a matter of storytelling and positioning.
Mhm.
So what do I mean? If the numbers does not get into a certain level or certain goal, what and I've been part of it, right? I know how to do it. I know how to not only cook the numbers, but how to position the number in a way that it looks good and it's not our fault.
All right.
Okay. Example: one of the most common metric in say a customer support is the customer satisfaction survey.
CSAT.
It's a whenever people hear the CSAT, they know that it's going to be a difficult account to be with,
Yes.
right? So what do we do if we do not hit the numbers? If the CSATs are not hit, we come up with so many permutations of why that CSAT is not met.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, there are only two things that comes out. It's the agent's fault or it's the industry's fault.
Mhm.
Almost nobody, as far as I can remember, from any of these organizations will say, it's our fault. We have not done the right thing.
Mhm.
And they would always come up with ways to kind of like mix and match the numbers and then make it appear look good. So that's one part of it. But there's also a lot of fraud that's happening in the billing, right?
Yeah.
The productive hours, because you want to maximize the revenue, correct? And how do you maximize the revenue? You bill the most number of hours. Although a lot of companies now have shifted to an FTE model. The FTE model is that you pay the full cost of an employee in a month.
And that is fixed.
That's fixed, so that there's a less opportunity to kind of cheat on that.
Yes.
But if you're a business owner and you're outsourcing, you have to think about ways to kind of like protect yourself from all of this fraudulent, because it happens a lot of times. So now, what does that mean for the employee? Your bosses are probably doing something that you're not seeing, and when they're manipulating these numbers, sometimes the agents are becoming the scapegoats.
Correct.
Okay, so you never know. Your name have been probably mentioned so many times in these QBRs, the quarterly business review. It's her fault. It's her fault. It's John's fault. It's Karen's fault. It's Catherine's fault, or whatever. It's always their fault and not the manager's fault, not the director's fault, not the vice president's fault. So this is why I'm saying, I think the opportunity for us to really bring this to a different level is we gotta have a level of training and a maturity from the mid management up until the senior management,
Mhm.
because it's a sad truth, right? The sad truth about this industry, because it's a very big industry. There's a lot of potential to it, even if it's a massive industry right now. The leaders and the managers, a lot of them are lazy as hell.
Okay.
Lazy as hell. Like lazy. There's so many levels. There's so many layers of leadership in the in that. There's a team manager, there's a manager, there's a senior manager, there's a director, there's a senior director, there's an assistant vice president, there's a vice president, there's all layers in the world. You remove half of them, nothing changed. So what are they?
Okay.
And what happens? All of these heads, leaders, gets a huge chunk of the salary that could have been distributed to the agents, because they wanna keep a certain level of margin. But in reality, you remove all of these leaders there, managers there, it's not gonna change anything. They don't add value. They're just there for namesake. And they're probably adding to the bureaucracy and the red tape of getting things done, right? And even worse, a salary of say a director is probably 10 times the salary of an agent. You could have hired 10 agents to do the job, give them good salaries, get better results out of it, just keep your organization flat. But that's not the case. And that's for me. I'm very conscious about building this kind of setup for our organization, because we want to make sure that our agents are getting paid the right salaries. So I think that's where it's coming from. But I'm not saying it's a bad industry. It's actually a good industry. There's a lot of opportunities for you to grow. If you want to have a fast-paced career and you really grow at 30 years old, you're probably going to be a director already. This is your industry. You're not going to get that from manufacturing. You're not going to get that from other industries. In the BPO, you can grow really fast-paced. But my only suggestion for the mid-managers who wants to grow fast is three things. Learn and adapt to the changes, but do not rely to what the company is teaching you.
Yeah.
You got to expose yourself outside of the organization, outside of the company, and have that learning. I think the most important thing that you have to learn is the leadership, because most of the time that's what's missing in the industry.
Okay.
So now for an agent who wants to get in the industry, it's not easy to get in. I gotta be honest with you. I think there's also a misconception that it's an industry where only those people who could not get a job somewhere are getting in. Yeah, but what you don't understand, and what a lot of people don't understand, it's so difficult to really even pass your training. So the moment you come in, your training, you're being measured every single day whether or not you're going to make it to the next level.
Correct.
Then you have your probationary period of 3 to 6 months, right? So before you actually become a regular, you have gone through so many things. And the most difficult aspect of this is you are expected to be an expert in an industry that you have no experience all about. And after 6 months, you're expected to be a very, very, very good customer support, and with a level of expertise that takes you 5-10 years to learn in a traditional industry.
So the learning curve for you as for a new hire to the level that you are expected to be an expert is only 6 months.
Yes,
and that includes the training,
everything.
Probationary,
Exactly. And if you don't make it then, and you're not considered an expert, then you probably will not get regularized. This is my where I salute the people in the industry, because you have to really learn fast. So I think from a skill set perspective, I have no doubt that this industry is very, very good. You take somebody from a BPO and put them in another industry, they will learn fast, because that's what they're made of. The only thing that I don't like from this industry is the level of maturity of the leaders, which is causing the toxicity, because the work already is difficult, the work already is challenging, and you add that level of immature leaders, then that's where the problem is really coming in, right? But the people that are working there, these are fighters. These are people who are fighting for their families. These are people who are breadwinners. These are people who are, doing a lot of things that you have no clue what they're going through life. These are people who are probably doing 3 jobs.
Correct.
So I have so many respect from the people in this industry, and there's absolutely no way you can put them down. They will fight, and that's, I think, the advantage. Now, on the other side, when I started venturing outside of the industry, what I've realized is that a lot of things that we do in the BPO actually is applicable in the real life business.
Interesting.
It's very, very applicable. And what you will really learn is that in the traditional businesses, even the high-tech businesses, they don't have a lot of processes and systems. So if you got exposed to a BPO, you will have that level of systems thinking, that process thinking, that now you go to a traditional company and you try to build that in a traditional company with that fast pace. That's where you become a superstar.
Correct.
That's why a lot of the BPO leaders, when they venture outside of the industry, they have that systems process thinking, and they implement that to these traditional companies, and then they suddenly skyrocket. So it's really just a matter of venturing out and having a cross-pollination in terms of a lot of things. So if you're somebody who's in the BPO industry right now, I suggest you learn. I suggest don't rely on the coaching, don't rely on the training, be active in learning outside of your company.
So, Nerd, we're talking about a lot of ideas and topics all throughout this episode. But if you're gonna summarize all of these, what could be the top three ideas or things that you wanna um, ask them to remember?
Okay, so I think I'd go with first thing as an employee, as somebody who wants to build a career in the BPO, you have to be aware in terms of what makes you a successful employee in this BPO in the industry. I'd say number one, you gotta have that level of discipline to show up no matter what. Have to be able to show up. People will see that you're disciplined enough. You've already succeeded half of what's required for you to be successful in this industry. That's number one. You gotta be able to adapt accordingly, have the flexibility to learn, and I would really highly recommend that you do not be stuck with whatever is done in training, whatever is done in coaching, and whatever is done in the company, because you have to venture out and experience something else and then bring that back to what you're doing. So I think that's number one. For you to be able to be successful in this industry, you just have to plow through. You have to have the grit in terms of get through those challenges, because one way or another you will have or you will encounter a toxic environment depending on the team, depending on the company, depending on the account, depending on your manager. So
Correct.
again, it all boils down to who's running the show, right? So look at that perspective and be very, very agile. Number two, if you want to be successful in terms of outsourcing as a business owner, then you have to be aware in terms of what are the potential pitfalls if you're not doing it with the right vendor. You could
Correct.
lose your data. The numbers could be manipulated. You might be working with a fraudulent vendor, and you probably don't know what exactly your people are doing. So you have to know, you have to vet accordingly, because the BPO industry is very, very good. But in any industry, there's always somebody who is scrupulous. There's always somebody who's crook. So be very, very careful about that. And then number three, I would say, I hope that this industry will get a lot more cross pollination, because through cross pollination, the leaders in the BPO will have an experience in terms of what is a leadership outside of the industry is. Maybe let me put it this way. One of the most sought after certifications in the BPO is the Six Sigma.
Six Sigma.
Correct? You're talking about the Six Sigma. A lot of leaders will talk about Kanban. A lot of leaders will talk about Untold. A lot of leaders will talk about how Toyota is actually doing their systems. But in reality, nobody really knows exactly what is this for. They're just doing that for the sake of certification and all the stuff, but nobody really knows exactly what it is. So I had that epiphany when I was reading the book, The Toyota Way. It's a very, very heavy read. That if the real purpose of Toyota, the way of Toyota, is a culture build-up. It's not the paper, the systems, the process, and all the stuff. It's about the culture of learning and be able to adapt to the changes as the systems require. That's basically what it is. But in the BPO industry, it's all about we document all the process and we follow that to the dot. That's the wrong perception. And what I'm trying to say in here is that if only there's a lot more cross-pollination from other industries going into the BPO industry, I think this industry is gonna be better, stronger, more powerful. So I think that's my thought processes in here. And my recommendation is that if you're a manager and you're in this industry, try to learn from the other industries and you will be very successful.
Great. I mean, I think those ideas are really something that we really want to look at. And you really made a good point in like looking outside the box of the outsourcing world if you're the manager. So out of the three, that's the one that's actually what struck me most as someone who's really working on this in this company or in this industry. So yeah, you might want to give them an introduction of what's going to be the topic on the
Yeah,
next
for
episode.
sure.
Yeah.
I think next episode we're gonna be talking about how do you get in. How do you get in the door of the recruitment? If you're a fresh graduate and you want to be in this industry, or you're somebody from another industry who wants to get in the BPO, what are the steps for you to be able to ace those interviews and be
Yes.
successful? what are you gonna do? Or if you want to become a virtual assistant, what are you gonna do?
Correct.
So I think in the next episode, we're gonna invite somebody from recruitment. She or they could actually help us out in terms of laying out the step-by-step processes. So watch out for the episode. We look forward to us meeting you next week.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All
Have a
right.
good one.
Thank you. Cheers,
Thanks,
man.
sir.